morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to talk about Pincurchin. Pincurchin is one of these lovely little cards that has been piquing my interest for a while, but now that we've seen Glimwood Tangle, that card we had a look at just the other day, I think we need to go and take another look at Pincurchin. Because I think we've now gotten to the stage where actually, it just got a whole lot better. Now, there's plenty of things not to like about Pincurchin. The 80 HP is kind of low, but it's not low enough to use something like Professor Round's Lecture, which is kind of annoying. And it's got a retreat cost of 2. I suppose we can use Air Balloon, but it's still higher than we might like. And it's only got 1 attack. But what an attack it is. For 2 lightning energy, it's got the attack Shocking Needles. You flip 4 coins, and this attack does 30 damage for each heads. If at least 2 of them are heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. And we've always had quite a good chance of getting the paralysis rolling here. It's just increased quite dramatically. Now look, if you can hit 4 heads, you do 120 damage, and paralysis for 2 energy on a basic Pokemon, that is Redonkadonk. If you flip 2 heads, you get 60 plus paralysis, but paralysis isn't easy to pull off. Paralysis is actually kind of difficult to get going. So 60 damage plus paralysis as an expectation, that's not too bad, ladies and gentlemen. That's not too bad. Now, the last one we had that I thought had a real genuine chance for every turn paralysis was the Kyurem from Unbroken Bonds. It's got the attack Hail Prison for 3 energy, does 110 damage, and you discard 2 water energy, and you get paralysis. And we had stuff like Naganadel to accelerate energy, and Quagsire to move the energy to the active, but it just never proved itself to be good enough. Although, as a side note, this is a card I'm probably going to be revisiting in the near future, because now that we've got Frostmoth, this might be a card we need to look a bit more seriously at. But I think Pincurchin could be better than Kyurem, and one of the reasons I like it better than Kyurem is the energy. Kyurem, you need Frostmoth or a couple of Naganadel, and you need Quagsire, and you're constantly discarding and having to get the energy back, and it can work, don't get me wrong, it can work. Like I said, I'm probably going to show you in a few days a video about exactly why I think it can work nowadays. But the fact of the matter is, this is easy. It's 2 lightning energy. And as it stands at the moment, lightning have 2 very, very nice tricks. We've got Thunder Mountain Prism Star, which admittedly will probably rotate out, but not till September the 1st. We'll have a little bit of time. And to be honest, rotating out isn't going to be the end of the world, because I already told you we're kind of relying on Glimwood Tangle. Well, Glimwood Tangle's a stadium card. How are we going to play that and Thunder Mountain? The answer is, in the early game, maybe with just a lower chance of paralysis, but yeah. And then we got Tapu Koko Prism Star. Now, here's the important thing about Tapu Koko Prism Star. If it's on the bench, you Lost Zone it, and when you Lost Zone it, you attach 1 lightning energy to each of 2 bench Pokemon. So you potentially turn 2 Pincurchin into single energy attackers. And that's very important, because now, well, you got 2 ready to go, okay? 2 of them are there and ready to roll. But remember, you're paralyzing. So clearly what you want to do is get paralysis rolling and buy time, and you can manually attach. You don't need to accelerate energy to all of your Pincurchin. You need to accelerate energy to 1 or 2 at the beginning of the game. Oh, look. Look how that worked out. And that's why I love this. Because you've got the easy to pay energy costs. An early Tapu Koko or Thunder Mountain if you're desperate, then enough time to manually attach, and your opponent's got to go through 4 Pincurchin, bearing in mind they should be paralyzed most of the time. Let's get to that paralysis, shall we? So, we've got Glimwood Tangle. And Glimwood Tangle is the stadium version of the old Victini, or if you prefer, Trick Coin. Although it's worth pointing out, it doesn't have that same addendum that you cannot combine it with anything. So whereas Trick Coin can't combine with anything, Victini and Glimwood Tangle can, so you could potentially reflip twice if you needed to and expanded. Because that, of course, is what Glimwood Tangle does. That's what Victini did. That's what Trick Coin did. If you flip coins for an attack, like for argument's sake, Shocking Needle, and the result of those flips is not exactly what you're looking for, you just get a chance to reflip. And it's all or nothing. You cannot just reflip the tails. You have to reflip all 4 of them. But it means you've got 2 chances to flip the number of heads you're looking for. That sounds good to me. So now, in order to miss paralysis, you've got to flip 3 or 4 tails twice. And the chances of doing that just aren't high. Now, the awkward thing comes out here when you flip 2 heads. So you flip 2 heads, you do 60 damage plus paralysis, you'd like to do a bit more, but then if you choose to reflip, you might hit 3 or 4, you might not. And this is where we need to go and have a word with our lovely friend, the lovely David Hockman. Not just a great judge, great player, great person, great translator, and the leading authority on the Unlimited format, but he's actually a very, very good mathematician as well, and he has gone and drawn these charts. So, he's got this first chart here that shows that each flip's outcome has a 0.5 chance to be heads and a 0.5 chance to be tails, assuming an unweighted coin that you could. Outcomes that follow each other get multiplied, so each outcome after 4 flips has a chance of 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5, which comes in at 0.0625. There are 11 outcomes which result in paralysis, so you times your outcome by 11 to get 0.6875, and that is your chance of paralysis normally. So you generally have a 68.75% chance of paralysing if you're not reflipping with Glimwood Tangle. And then, of course, there are 5 unfavourable outcomes. So you times your 0.0625 times 5, and that gives you a 31.25% chance of not getting paralysis. But of course now we're doing it twice. So we've got the chance of paralysing the first time and the chance of paralysing the second time, and we move away from looking at coin flips here and we just focus on the chance to paralyse. There is a 0.3125 chance to miss, as we know, and then you can reflip to get the same chance again. And if you want one thing and another thing to happen, you multiply the chances, which means that you have a 0.21 chance of paralysing after the reflip and a 0.08 chance of missing on the reflip. Essentially, we come out at a 0.90 chance of getting paralysis. If the maths was a bit too much there, you basically have a dead-on 90% chance of getting paralysis. 9 turns out of 10, Pincurchin should be paralysing here. So we can kind of assume it's going to happen. Now, this isn't quite as high a chance as we used to have back with Vanillux and Victini. The Vanillux from Noble Victories, you had to flip double tails twice in order to whiff paralysis, and that got a little bit silly. But as it stands, this is still a very, very high chance of paralysis. And that's essentially why I think Pincurchin's going to be good. We've got the energy on there quite easily, and that's important. We've got a very high chance of paralysis, and that's important. Now, the other thing to remember is we are a lightning Pokemon, so we can do a little bit of extra damage with Electro Power. That could be quite good. And the lovely Antoine Boulet has actually gone and written a deck list for this. I'll show it to you in a minute. But there are a couple very important things that he has pointed out. Now, one thing we do need, and this is played in a lot of decks over in Japan, Fione. Fione becomes huge here because essentially you're trying to either do enough damage to beat your opponent or deck them out. It doesn't really matter. But you might end up in a situation where you're both running very short of cards. Using Fiona to make sure you don't deck out can be big. But also Fiona can make your opponent switch their active. And if they've only got one active that could really challenge you, force them to swap it for somebody else. They get a choice of what comes active, and then you basically stick that in the active with paralysis. Unless they've got multiple good attackers, this will work and buy you a fair bit of time. But then if you're going to deck out, Fiona will stop you decking out. And I will be honest, I thought of Fiona myself. What I did not think of myself, and then all credit goes to Antoine for this one, Alolan Muck. You see, we've got an Alolan Muck, which helps kind of beautifully with this. It's the one from Team Up, and it's the one whereby when you evolve into it, you look at the top 6 cards of your opponent's deck, discard any item cards you find there, and your opponent puts the other cards into their deck. And what you're trying to do here is just run your opponent out of item cards. Sounds like fun. They'll still have their Pokemon, they'll still have their energy, they'll still have their supporters, but they are going to be struggling to set up. They're going to be setting up very slowly. Now, you're not going to be one-hit KOing with Pincurchin. In reality, you're not going to be two-hit KOing. But it doesn't really matter. You can be 3, 4, 5-hit KOing if they're paralyzed and they're setting up very slowly because they don't have item cards. Who really cares how many hits it's taking you to KO? The other thing we need to bear in mind here that is extremely important is that we would be playing Scoop Up Net here so that you can be picking up your Alolan Muck and constantly reusing it. Antoine's suggestion, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, is that you play a 2-1 line. So you bench your Alolan Grimer with an Alolan Muck and then a second Alolan Grimer. And you play Scoop Up Net, you evolve and bench Grimer. And then every time you play Scoop Up Net, you get the ability right now, while playing down an Alolan Grimer to use the ability as early as next turn. That seems fairly logical to me. If you want a bigger attacker, might I suggest Tapu Koko V? The reason we like Tapu Koko V is because free energy 200 damage, plus it's got an attack that does 20 damage and draws 2 cards if you're desperate in the early game, and it's got free retreat. There are plenty of other free energy lightning Pokemon you can use. Pikachu and Zekrom that can accelerate energy, but it doesn't do as much damage and it gives up free prizes. Zeraora, but we're expecting that to rotate soon, and it doesn't do as much damage, and it doesn't have free retreat. Although I suppose it does with the ability, and it gives everyone else free retreat. That's actually really good. And it can accelerate energy, but it can't draw cards, and it doesn't do enough damage. Raichu and Alolan Raichu, but you got to be flicking in and out of the active, and it does do paralysis, which amuses me, but it also gives up free prizes. I think Tapu Koko V, if you want one big Pokemon that's a free energy attacker, because Thunder Mountain and Tapu Koko means you can get it rolling in one turn, I think Tapu Koko V is the best one to go for. Plus the free retreat and the early game draw is nothing to be sniffed at. And I should probably add before we finish here that being a lightning Pokemon in the upcoming format means you are going to have access to speed energy, that new special energy that when you attach it to a lightning Pokemon lets you draw 2 cards. You do need to be a bit wary of people playing energy removal, because after the early game Prism Stars you are then out of energy acceleration, but it's still something I'd play here because you get to draw extra cards. I can't sit here today and tell you that Pincurchin is going to be an absolute powerhouse and start ruling the format. What I can tell you is that it's so much better than it used to be, and it stands such a better chance. And when you start adding in things like Scoop Up Net to reuse Alolan Muck and Glimwood Tangle to reflip, it gets so much better. Shout out once again to lovely Antoine Boulet for providing the list, which is up on the screen. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm buying Pincurchin. I think it's good, but I'd like to know if you do. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WazzyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darned awesome nonetheless. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.